Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Deepblocks weekly webinar. My name is Michael Cavone, your Chief Revenue Officer of Deepblocks. I appreciate you taking the time this week to join us as we going to explore Brooklyn. We're going to be looking and canvassing Crown Heights, a little bit of Prospect Heights, looking for multifamily sites to develop. We're going to show you the power of Deepblocks with our automated site selection and kind of go through very quickly how we can scan the Crown Heights market in a relatively short period of time and find key locations for multifamily development. We're going to kind of activate and enable certain pieces of criteria and to narrow down from thousands of parcels within that particular part of Brooklyn, New York, and find some good development opportunities. But before we get started, I'm going to give a few more minutes to let some more people join us. Again, I do appreciate you taking the time to be with us this Thursday. Again, feel free to use the chat if you have any specific questions. If there's any questions at the end of the webinar, feel free to reach out to me at michael@deepblocks.com. We can always set up a one-on-one demonstration and go through the software and see how it can cater to your needs and suit you. Please keep in mind, this is a great time to be a part of Deepblocks because everyone can see with the market and the inflation and pricing constantly increasing. It's just a good time with Deepblocks to really help you save time, reduce your upfront costs using our software. I mean, we have companies that we partner with all the time, just how they state how happy they are to use our software to, again, not only expedite the process and turn months of work into literally a matter of minutes, but as well as save them a lot of upfront costs that they were spending before using Deepblocks. Now with Deepblocks, they're able to go through feasibility studies and kind of really understand the true potential of these particular parcels. And again, using our site selection tool to find these parcels. And they're really able to go through that whole process with the software, and it cuts out, it could be up to $5,000-$10,000 per feasibility study and iteration that you might have to pay a consultant. Where Deepblocks, you can use the software to do it right there, right at your fingertips, and really get a good understanding of what makes sense for a particular property. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to kind of jump in and explore a little bit of our website, and then we'll get started. And again, canvas and search the market in Brooklyn. And again, we're going to probably focus mainly on Crown Heights, a little bit of Prospect Heights, which are kind of neighboring each other in Brooklyn. So I'm going to share my screen and just quickly go through, like each week I like to do is just kind of show you our website. Here is our homepage. I always like to kind of jump into the cities that we're in. As I like to always mention, we're in 100 cities at the moment with zoning data. We're by far the leader of digitizing and standardizing zoning information, market intelligence, property information, and truly one of the only software solutions out there converging all these different data sets into one centralized location. And we continue to add more and more data sets to our software. Our vision and goal is to continue to accrue this data. And one of the certain things we are working on at the moment and going to be implementing into the software is giving you the ability to compare cities based on numerous data sets and data points to truly evaluate and say what city makes more sense in terms of development potential for specific uses or land values, looking at sales costs and all these different trends to help guide you in choosing a city where there's the next development opportunity. And then once you choose that city, you'll be able to break it down by census tract and kind of go through the same analysis, again, guiding you through that process. And eventually, once you hone in on a specific census tract, you can then use the site selection tool of Deepblocks to quickly find parcels that match your criteria. It's just, again, we're really advancing the way of doing site selection, automating that process, using artificial intelligence and our machine learning models to really advance, again, the process and really bring you cutting edge technology and streamline a process that is very disparate disparate in terms of information, very fragmented, and we're trying to streamline that for you. So again, we are in 100 cities with over 11 million properties and counting in our software. Additionally, we have our webinar section where you can see previous webinars, our tutorial section, which we're continuing to add to and bring in tutorials for you, which are going to be anywhere from 30 to 60-second clips, kind of showing key functionalities. We're actually working on a more comprehensive tutorial that's a few minutes long to kind of go through the entire software. So just another resource for you to help understand the functionalities of Deepblocks. And then lastly, we have our pricing right now at $36,000 a year for our national subscription, which gives you access to all 100 cities. We also offer a local license, which is 5,400 per city. And then we also are now offering a state license where you can actually pay by state, which is $18,000 per state. So we give you a few options here to try to work with you and accommodate your needs. Again, always feel free to reach out to me if you want to go into more detail about pricing, about setting up a demo and learning again more about Deepblocks. So with that being said, let's get ourselves started, and we're going to jump into Crown Heights in Brooklyn, New York. And again, we're searching for multifamily sites. We're going to kind of show you the capabilities of enabling certain criteria to really narrow down the parcels that are available, for you to figure out the development potential for multifamily. So I'm just going to type in Crown Heights. And there you see pops up, hit search engine, and here we are on Deepblocks. So this, as you may or may not know, the software for Deepblocks is kind of broken into two different interfaces. The front end is our market scanner or our site selection tool. So essentially it allows you to go through thousands and thousands of sites and parcels and narrow down those your results based on specific criteria. And it also allows you to apply different map layers from buildable area ratio, opportunity zones, various market rates for residential, market rates for office, industrial. And we also show different demographic trends. So you can also apply census data in terms of median income, median rent, just very analytical piece of information to help you truly understand a marketplace and really get a good feel for what makes sense in terms of finding these sites. And then once you kind of select a site, and again, you can select sites in one of many ways. You can select one site at a time. You can use our assemblage tool and select multiple sites at once and look at an entire city block, for instance, and analyze an entire assemblage. You can also draw a parcel. Pretty much the draw parcel tool pretty much works anywhere actually in the world. But for instance, you can find a larger parcel and you can subdivide that parcel and use our draw parcel tool for that. Last week I demonstrated how to draw numerous parcels within a larger parcel for built to rent development. So a tremendous amount of flexibility using Deepblocks. And once you select a parcel or again an assemblage, you can then go into our Explorer interface and do feasibility studies. We have our 3D modeler with financials, so it gives you 1 year back of the envelope return on costs, enter in setbacks, enter in assumptions on the income and cost side, and truly evaluate and assess what the true potential is of that parcel. So as we're looking right now into my viewport, and just a little piece of advice, I use Google Chrome. It is a SaaS product. Deepblocks is a SaaS product. So and I typically like to zoom out at about 80%. The more you can capture in your viewport, the more parcels you can look at and pretty much more of the market you can scan. So right now, just to give you kind of a rough idea of how many parcels we're looking at in this part of Crown Heights, I've got about 5,000 parcels roughly in my particular viewport. The software is very interactive and intuitive. So as you kind of move your screen north, south, east, or west, and you enter in criteria, the software automatically updates your results. So, for instance, what we're going to kind of start looking for some, let's see, I'm going to look for some residential. So we have about 5,000 parcels matching, obviously residential, considering this part of Crown Heights is highly residential. And then we continue to kind of just start narrowing down. So I'm going to be looking for a minimum of units allowed of 100 units and greater. Now, just to give you a couple, show you some of the layers that we can overlay on top is we have one layer called unit density. This kind of gives you a good indication. And I'm actually going to zoom out for 1 second. Well, then we'll resume our search. But the way unit density works, it gives you a good idea of where there's, again, high density or pockets of interest, and where you can kind of identify where there's development potential in the sense that maybe there's an existing building in place and it's only the current structure's only got 5 or 6 units, but meanwhile it's actually zoned for 20 or 30 units. So we have an index that we built to kind of give you an idea to guide your search. So kind of that deep orange and that deep red will indicate where we're seeing that potential, where you can capitalize on that underdeveloped particular property, and again, look at that parcel and kind of see the zoning. You'll see. And another way what we do is, and I'll show you in my searches, we'll enable the existing building, and we'll look for older buildings. Usually an older building is not maximizing the true potential of the zoning rules, and we can kind of look at a site from that perspective. So, another thing we like to always show is our buildable area ratio map layer. Again, it's a very similar concept, just gives you an idea of where we're seeing density and where we're seeing pockets of interest. You can see these clusters here in the orange and the red. But for this, we're going to focus more on the unit density, since I'm kind of looking more for a multifamily development play. We can always turn on opportunity zones as well, and you'll see that overlay on top of throughout this part of Brooklyn. So Crown Heights is pretty much in this particular area, and this kind of goes into Prospect Heights. So we're going to zoom back in. And just to show you some other layers that we like to always look at when we're kind of searching for certain sites. Again, here's our census tract information. We can look at median incomes. I'm going to continue to zoom in. So you'll see it broken down by each neighborhood and census tract throughout Brooklyn. So you get a wide range here from anywhere from up to 70,000 down to about 20-something thousand. So depending on what you're trying to build, adding this, enabling this layer can give you a good feel of what type of multifamily play you're looking to develop. We also show our residential rates. This is basically dollar per square foot we're seeing. We basically take an aggregate of listing data throughout the country, break it down by census tract, and then we apply our machine learning to it to bring a strong baseline of dollar per square foot. And so it's just a good way of kind of, as I like to say, is a strong baseline. So we're going to continue to zoom back in, get back to our search, and start to look for different parcels based on specific criteria. So again, just to kind of reiterate, we're looking at about right now, because I see if you zoom your screen out to a certain point, I'm actually looking at 15,000 parcels matching, because I zoomed out to a point to capture as many parcels as possible. So I'm not going to look for a minimum of 100 units, and now we're down to 372 parcels. So we just literally went from 15,000 down to 372. You can export this out, all those listings, to a CSV file, and pretty much it's a solid resource. You'll get all the legal addresses for those parcels, the folio numbers, as long as about 15 additional columns of information tied to demographic data, the zoning data, and other key pieces of information for each parcel. But let's continue to narrow our search down. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to use the existing building layer. We're going to try to find buildings of less than 10,000 square feet. Again, probably figure anything less than that is probably not maximizing the units allowed, and that is possible. Now we're down to 16 parcels. So again, at a matter of minutes, we literally just went from looking at over 15,000 parcels and now down to 16, based on a minimum of 100 units allowed with an existing building area of 10,000 square feet. And I'll just put to 0. And then lastly, we could also look at any building that's relatively old. So we'll say anything from 1900 to 1950 to see how many buildings come up. Because again, the older the building and the less square footage, we probably are going to find some good opportunities. So now we're down to 7 parcels matching. So within Crown Heights, we find these 7 parcels. And let's now we'll start to zoom in and begin to assess these parcels to see what makes the most sense. And I'll take you through, I'm probably going to choose one site, and I'll show you the Explorer interface, which is the other interface part, the other portion of Deepblocks that allows you to go through feasibility studies. Again, enter in those income assumption, cost assumption, enter in setbacks, and truly, understand that true potential of a parcel. So let's zoom in a bit, and let's kind of see what we're looking at here. So it's a good sized parcel right there. All right, so we're looking at, and as you select a parcel, your information will appear for the property. So we got an existing building of only 1,400 square feet, built in 1910. But you'll notice that the buildable area is 83,000. FAR is your varies from 0.94 to 602. You can build up to 123 units on this particular parcel. So, it gives you the building height. We get our lot coverage, and it kind of gives you the key guidelines and zoning parameters to really see what we can do and develop with this particular property. Let's look at some other ones as well. Let's scroll back out to see this one over here. This one allows 120 units. It's 6,500 square feet, built in 1931. So again, just kind of going through what might make the most sense as we try to develop a nice multifamily play here in Crown Heights. Let's see what else we got. This is kind of the concept of the Deepblocks. You want to just quickly scan these markets and truly evaluate to see what makes sense. These, again, we like to present off-market deals. We want to present to you everything possible to, potentially find that diamond in the rough. Again, if you know the area pretty well, you might be able to make sense of what is a legitimate opportunity. And the biggest other major contributor of Deepblocks is the fact that you can do this at scale. So, I mean, we're right now not only focusing in a large city like New York City, but we can now take this software, apply it to, and do similar searches across the country into California. And because we're in 20 plus cities now in California, we're 20 plus cities in Florida, 12 cities in Texas. So really covering a lot of the big states. We're starting to seep out to a lot of the secondary markets, starting to cover some of the MSAs of these primary markets. So this software has got so much flexibility to not only survey and canvas a market like New York City, but then we can take what maybe works for us in New York, we can apply that concept into a different state and use that criteria. And so it gives you that ability to scale. So just going to continue to scan the market a little bit to see what else we have here. Right. I mean, we've hit some pretty solid criteria. As I mentioned, we zoned for at least a minimum of 100 units allowed, less than 10,000 square feet of existing building, and it's the year built is at least 1900 and 1950. So we got a couple more over here. Let's see if this corner lot could be an interesting play. I got 1923, 116 units. All right. So with that being said, let's kind of take advantage of this and see what else you can also do here. You might be able to do a little retail on the bottom as well. Let's see if there's the last for that might only just allow for just residential at the moment. Yeah, it looks like we're just going to do residential. All right. So let's look at this corner lot and let's kind of go through the Explorer interface to develop this and see what the potential is with this particular building. So basically the next step as we select this particular parcel. Now, just again, keep in mind, if you find a parcel like this and we know that we can maybe potentially negotiate the rest of this block, you can use our assemblage tool and literally we can evaluate this entire block along Buffalo Avenue and basically say to ourselves and go through the feasibility study to see if this makes sense and, kind of work a deal. But for this particular example, I'm just going to focus in on this one particular parcel on the corner, and we're going to put on preliminary underwriting. We're going to select multifamily. You'll see it gets pre-populated with the FAR recommendation. And we're now going to the software is calculating and building out the 3D model and massing, and we're now going to analyze the true potential of this particular parcel. So we are now looking, just to kind of give you a little overview of how this works. We have our key performance indicators down here. Everything is, as I mentioned, it's interactive. Everything computes automatically. So as you adjust any type of setbacks, your building height, enter in, again, income and cost assumptions, your return analysis automatically updates and gets computed and calculated. The breakdown of assumptions is automatically updated. So, and then lastly, you'll be able to generate a forward-page PDF report to kind of share with your colleagues and coworkers. It's a great little 4-pager just to give you a little bit of a writing summary of the property. And I'll show you that when we're finished. But as long as the zoning, stacking plan, the demographic trends, and then the breakdown of that financial analysis. So keep in mind that it is a 1-year return on cost, but we're giving you a high level overview and assessment of what is the potential of this particular parcel. So what we first like to do is you like to kind of go into that property info that we were just looking at in the previous interface. And we're going to use this as our guide to molding this particular 3D model in our financial analysis. So one of the first things I like to start out with is we understand that the units allowed here is 116. So we're going to jump into our assumptions, adjust. We're going to put 116 in here. All right. And then we can also So number of stories is 7, but 11 stories with quality housing with quality ground floor. So these are just different guidelines we got to pay attention to as we build this out. But the FAR again is 0.94 to 6.02, so we are a little bit over, but that's the point of using Deepblocks, to kind of adjust this and work on it to kind of fit within the zoning parameters. Residential parking, group parking of 70% of total units when using height factor. So you kind of got to follow this for in terms of your parking. Then we also have our setbacks. So let's see, our setbacks for this particular is 20 in the front on a narrow street, 15 on a wide street. And then we have 0, 0, and then 30 on the rear. In the rear for rear yard exceptions may apply. So let's go into our setback mode. We can uniquely identify each side. So this is going to be our primary because it's on Buffalo Ave. This will be our rear. Actually, I'm going to make this C. All right, we'll exit our setback mode, and now we'll just enter in these setbacks based on what we just were studying. There's 20 and then 30. So we're at 51% lot coverage. Now, obviously, we're a little bit over in terms of the size of the building. So we can do numerous things. For instance, we can obviously reduce the number of units. We could also decrease the size of the apartments. So we can maybe make these 700 square feet and start to work on this to get it within the zoning parameters. Maybe we can only do 100 units for this. So now we're down to a 7 FAR. Maybe the biggest we could do is 680 square feet. We could also reduce the amenities down to, let's say, 2,000. And we can maybe reduce the loss factor to 18%. And again, so now we're down to underneath, right around that FAR that's part of the zoning parameters of, which is, I believe, 6.02. So we're still a little bit over. But this is kind of the premise of Deepblocks. You can sit here, manipulate the model, work it, and see what makes sense. See if this is beneficial to develop on this particular parcel. You know, it's an older building is in place, most likely not maximizing the units allowed. So there's probably a tremendous amount of potential and upside in redeveloping this particular area. So, and again, you kind of get a good idea of our return on cost. So we can now adjust our income side, right? And we do bring in sub-market rates for this particular census tract. We're showing about $3,000 per month for lease. But again, we leave it adjustable because we know it can be much higher than that depending on what type of building you're developing, as well as it can also be lower if you're looking at doing an affordable housing play. So it just depends. Probably could get more than, I'm going to say a little more than 4,000 per a month per 2-bedroom up there. But again, I'm just showing you the capability that we leave everything flexible and adjustable by you. And that is the concept of Deepblocks, to keep things, to put, adjustable to the point of really maximizing these values. So we can also adjust our purchase price if we feel we can get a little bit better price in that. You'll see our hard costs are $1 per square foot. Now that's probably a little bit on the lower side, so we're going to have to bring that up a bit. So maybe we're looking at $250 a square foot. Again, these are sub-market values, calculated by taking an aggregate of listing data throughout the country and applying our machine learning. But as I mentioned, we'd like to keep things open for you to adjust and change as you go through it. Soft cost is a percentage of that hard cost. I'll leave that at 6% contingencies. And I have not put parking in for this particular building. Now we can add parking pretty simply. Again, we provide the guidelines for parking just for simplicity of this particular example. We can just quickly throw in 1.5. And again, we're going to kind of go over our FAR by adding that parking. So let's just drop it down to 1 for argument's sake. And we can go back to that property use and see if we can adjust this a little bit more. Maybe I have to do a little less units. And still a little bit higher. So you drop the size of the building. So again, just without going in too much depth here, but it just kind of exemplifies how you can quickly, literally in a matter of 20 minutes, went from 15,000 parcels to just to 6, meeting my criteria of units allowed of at least 100 units allowed, existing building of 10,000 square feet and less, as well as buildings dating back from 1900 to 1950. Because again, the concept there is that if it's an older building in a certain existing building structure, most likely it's not maximizing the units allowed for the current zoning. So it could be a very good opportunity to develop and meet those new zoning requirements, and again, capitalize on that redevelopment possibility. So, and as I mentioned, we can go through these assumptions and continue to adjust and work it within the zoning constraints. Additionally, we could also always keep in mind, you copy this project, we can then evaluate other iterations of this. If this was zoned for retail as well, which I don't believe this particular parcel is, but just to show you that we could copy this project and retail was available, we could throw retail right at the bottom. And again, we go through these similar assumptions that we just did for multifamily. You can do the same thing for retail and kind of, again, assess and see what is possible with an additional use. So you can do a mixed use building. We could also throw in our existing building layer just to get an idea of a little bit of perspective and scope of what this looks like here in Crown Heights. And this part of Brooklyn, probably one a little east of Crown Heights, but roughly in the same neighborhood. But lastly, we can go into this return analysis. We'll see our breakdown. This again ends in your return on cost is 10.5%. We'll see our breakdown of assumptions from property assumptions, building assumptions, areas, economics. So you can see rent per square foot of what's being charged, project costs. And then lastly, we have our PDF report. And I'll quickly demonstrate and show you what is capable in this PDF report. You'll notice you can, let me just recenter my. So basically, again, it's a 4-page report, real clean, nice report. You pretty much, you can upload your own image here. You can change this with your logo, change the color palette of the report, write your own summary. Again, you'll get your property info, zoning summary, a stacking plan, key demographic trends for this particular area, as well as the assumptions and return analysis at 1 year back of the envelope return on costs. But the cool thing about Deepblocks again is just not only is it a very robust piece of software and tremendous flexibility, but it's just the power behind it with converging all these data sets into one solution. And as I mentioned, we continue to add more and more data sets. We're looking to always add new layers and trying to stay ahead with very valuable information and data sets that will help you make a stronger decision and drive those decisions and drive those in a timely manner. So you're not taking weeks and months to figure out what makes sense. You can do it again in a matter of minutes. And, I always like to discuss an example of one of our partners that we work with, in the city of New York, found 20 off-market deals or off-market sites based on their criteria in a matter of minutes. It's something they said would have took them weeks, if not months, to find these 20 sites if they would have even found them the old way they were doing. With Deepblocks, they were able to find them and brought one to LOI very quickly. So it's just one example. Another gentleman likes to always share how he saved about $10,000 on from spending money on understanding what was possible on a particular site, and he was able to do it extremely quickly in a matter of minutes. Something that would have taken a week or two to put together, and again would have spent that money and just to not even get the answer that you may have been looking for. At least with Deepblocks, you can kind of assess and really understand quickly, does a particular site make sense? And then once you got a good understanding of it, you might then say to yourself, all right, let's put our resources there and let's move forward with this particular site and development of this site. So again, I just do appreciate your time. I do appreciate you joining us this week. And as we explored Crown Heights, a little bit of Prospect Heights and other parts of Brooklyn, to just, again, quickly show you how we can, in a matter of minutes, go from 15,000 properties to just 6 matching properties based on our criteria, and go through that feasibility study using the Explorer interface. But between our automated site selection and our Explorer interface, the combination is extremely powerful in terms of helping you optimize your process and really meet your development goals. So with that being said, again, I do appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you next week. Feel free to reach out to me at michael@deepblocks.com if you have any questions.